Minecraft has a big problem. A problem that I've been trying to solve for almost 2 years. And I'm not the only one. Hundreds of others have been trying to solve this problem for over a decade. And since Minecraft's release almost 20 years ago, Mojang have consistently been releasing updates every year, each one adding new items or blocks to collect. There are so many items that there are more than 1,800 of them that can be obtained in survival mode alone. But despite all of these updates, the last time we had any sort of inventory update was more than 10 years ago. And what exactly did we get in that update? One slot. One slot compared to the hundreds of items added to the game. Now, don't get me wrong, all of these updates have been amazing, and Mojang have tried to help by adding things like bundles and copper golems, but honestly, these are only a band-aid fix. Every time I reach the end game on one of my playthroughs, I don't ever really find myself needing to use bundles when I'm working on big projects. Their storage space is just too small compared to shulker boxes. And copper golems are only really good for small storage systems. And with the idea of forever worlds popping up on YouTube recently, it started to get me to think, what about the long term? Countless hours AFKing at farms, running between storage systems and clicking through unorganized chests. For what? What if I told you that it didn't have to be this way? What would you do? What would you make? What if I told you that the possibilities were limitless?
マジか。領域展開。無料空所。
So you probably have some questions. Take a seat with me real quick on these stairs for the final time before cushions are released, and let me see if I can answer some of the biggest ones first. And if you still have more questions by the end of this video, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to get to them. I may also do a Q&A video or a stream or something if there's enough interest. So what exactly is a limitless storage system? I want to say it's really quite simple, but it's actually not. It's a system that is meant to take the concept of storage tech and take it as far as it can go. I designed it to include smart technology, to make automation of items easier so we can spend less time crafting and trying to sort our inventories, and more time building and doing the things most of us actually want to do. To take automated storage to a level that has never been done before. Which leads me to our second question. Why am I making this video? I'm actually making this video for quite a few reasons. For starters, I wanted to make a storage system that could be universally understood, that can work for any scenario. I wanted a system that could store any item in the game, even ones Mojang haven't added yet. And I wanted to be able to hook them up to farms and autocrafters to be able to make as many items in the game as possible, completely automatically. Not only did I want this system to be logically compact and decently efficient, I wanted it to be able to look good too. I wanted it to be easily formed into any build so that the redstone did all of the work for us and all we had to do is choose what we wanted to make. See, I not only love the redstone and automation side of this game, but I absolutely adore the building side. And while designing this system, I wanted to make sure I kept a builder's perspective in mind as well. And after spending almost 2 years making this thing, I knew I had to make a video on it. I wanted to share this design with the rest of the community in hopes that others will use it, test it, and make their own systems. And by doing so, make this the best system it can be. And it's this reason that I'm also going to be releasing the world download and a copy of the spreadsheet for free, so that anyone can download it, look at the designs, and modify and change them to your liking, and then make whatever storage system you want. You can find all of that info in the description below. And since sharing this project is pretty important to me, that leads us to reason number 4. This video is also going to serve as my submission video to the Summer of Awesome Redstone, a redstone video contest hosted by Matt Batwings and Crafty Masterman over in the Redstone Army Discord. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Matt and Crafty for hosting this. The Summer of Awesome Redstone is a video contest where hundreds of redstoners are sharing their amazing redstone builds. I also highly recommend going and checking out all of the amazing videos that have been submitted as well. If you want to learn more about the SOAR contest, you can find all of the info about it in the description, and a link to the Redstone Army Discord as well. So now on to the 5th and final reason. This video is going to serve as the main video in a series of other videos that will dive deeper into more thorough explanations and tutorials on the different parts of this massive machine, so that you can learn how to make your own. Think of it like Video 0 or the predecessor to the rest of them. Because there is so much information when it comes to this thing, the amount of time it would take to explain and go through everything in one video would take way longer than an hour. So this video is going to branch out into several other ones that dive deeper on the details. Okay, so now you know why I'm making this, but first, in order to understand how this thing even works, you first need to understand, how did we get here? I'm sure we all know by now Minecraft's inventory is pretty small, especially compared to how many items are in the modern versions of the game. And until Mojang hopefully add a more long-term solution, you know, like a backpack or something, our next best option is to make a really big storage room. But in every single one of my playthroughs, I end up just going through the same gameplay loop. I want to build something cool, I need a ton of resources to do it, I build a farm for those resources, and then I end up scrambling through hundreds of unorganized chests at all of my different farms and storage systems, trying to find everything I need to be able to do what I want to do. Eventually, I end up getting a little burnt out, and I take a break from the game. But during one specific break from Minecraft in 2019, I got kind of addicted to a game called Satisfactory. This game absolutely fascinated me. It's a factory game where the goal is to automate tons of resources to make more machines and more factories. If any of this is ringing any bells, it's probably because Minecraft farms and Redstone are just like this. And of course, I thought, what if I could do the same thing in Minecraft? After that, I became obsessed with building all kinds of things like farms, storage systems, world eaters, and all kinds of other redstone machines. I was obsessed with automating as much as I could in the game, learning from redstone pros like Etho and Omango, but I eventually came to another roadblock in my automation journey. Crafting. In order to automate crafting, at the time, it would have taken making really complex redstone machines to get it to work. This in combination with computer scripts that automatically make your player pick up items, craft them, and then throw them into an item stream, something I was never too fond of. Not because the systems that were made are bad, but because I just had no idea how to code. And so at the time, it just kind of seemed like auto crafting was out of reach. But then, on October 15th, 2023, Mojang announced at Minecraft Live that they would be adding a block to the game that would forever change the course of the future for all of us. The Crafter. Mojang announced the Crafter would be added to the game, a block that can automate crafting recipes with redstone input. And on June 13th, 2024, it was released. Finally, I knew what I had to do. I actually didn't start right away though. Not only was I busy with real life around the time, but I also just kind of assumed one of the big redstone YouTubers would make what I had imagined. After about 6 months of messing around and waiting, I never saw anyone actually make a crafting system to the scale I had thought of. The only one who had come close to what I had imagined was Cubic Meter and his Universal Smart Crafter, but I ran into a similar issue with this design that I had with other ultimate storage systems. The redstone on it is just too complex for me to wrap my head around, and if I wanted to modify or expand it, it would have meant having to learn how each of these systems worked to a really advanced level, something that would have taken me years to do. I decided that I needed to finally step up to the challenge myself.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
I got to work making what I now call the SF66. SF stands for Stone Factory, and the 66 is short for 1966, which is the same year that the Apollo guidance computer was invented to help the astronauts reach the moon. I thought that the final design ended up kind of looking like that computer, and so I added the 66 on the name for fun. The SF66 was designed to handle every recipe in the game that could be made with cobblestone, crafting things like granite and diorite by combining it with quartz, and of course making all the stairs, walls, and slab variants. It was also meant to craft about 90% of all of the redstone components in the game, since most of them use cobblestone to make anyway. Some of the biggest features of this design are actually inspired by 3 people from Hermitcraft. I liked all of Mumbo Jumbo's industrial storage districts with all kinds of different farms. And Impulse SB had a really cool design where he could toggle all of his farms from a central command room. And Tango Tech's bulk storage silo that he made over 13 years ago is probably my favorite piece of smart storage tech that is still used today. I wanted to mesh these ideas together and be able to turn on any farm and any crafter at any time. So how does this thing work? There are 2 sets of storage silos on either side, with a note block switch that sends a signal towards the center of the storage system. There's also a 3rd set of bulk storage displays towards the top. If any of the redstone lines from the first 2 sets intersect with any of the lines that travel to the 3rd set of silos, they turn on a set of double-speed Shulkerbox Loaders, and then the items get sent to the crafters. I call this 3rd set of silos provider items, because all of these items are used in crafting recipes. And the benefit of having these silos set up in this way is that any of these silos can activate any number of these dispensing systems. For you redstone gurus out there, you might recognize this redstone layout as a binary encoder. but I like to call this system the Universal Network Communicator, or U.N.C for short. I want to say I use that abbreviation because it helps me remember what that system actually does, but I won't lie, I used it because I thought it was funny. For the crafters, I'm using a few different designs. The first design was made by Brandon Hennis, and it was actually the first one-wide design I found on YouTube right after crafters were added. The other two designs were made by Razeworks. I ended up using the 2-item type crafter and the universal crafter that handles up to 9 different items at a time. I separated all of these crafters into 2 different crafting loops, and I also collected various farms from different tutorials on YouTube. And this is the final result. I initially intended to make a video on this design, but after about 100 hours of testing, you can probably imagine I ended up running into quite a few flaws, and 2 major problems. Some of the flaws were a little easier to work around, but there was still 2 problems that I couldn't seem to figure out. And to understand those problems, there are some terms that you need to understand first. The first term is tileability. Tileability is a storage tech term that essentially refers to a really compact redstone module that can be duplicated and expanded horizontally right next to each other. And the bonus of setting it up like this means that each of these redstone machines can work independently of each other. You may also hear the term stacking, referring to when you duplicate these machines next to each other, and the term slices refers to one slice being one of these modules in a big group of them. We'll get more into slices and stacking a little later into the video, but why exactly is tileability a problem? It actually goes hand in hand with our second problem. As I was editing this video, Mojang released Snapshot 26.7 for this year's autumn drop. In these sets of snapshots, Mojang added almost 200 blocks and items to the game, including cushions, wool slabs and stairs, and concrete slabs and stairs, which makes me really want to emphasize the importance of our second problem here: expandability. In the future, if Mojang continue to add more items, we're going to need to consider how we're going to make room for new ones. And I realized that expanding this storage system to accommodate those new blocks would mean completely redoing the entire storage to make room. And it meant that as time goes on, expanding this storage would exponentially take up a massive amount of physical space. And this thing was already massive as it is. It takes up 250 by 250 blocks and only stores about 50 items. That's less than 3% of the total items in the game. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, trying to build something like this in survival and keeping it loaded would be really challenging, especially if you wanted to introduce new items or different farms. I realized the only way around that would be making completely new custom storage systems for all kinds of different farms. And after doing that for a while and making a few different designs, I realized that not only would it take years to develop all of these different storage systems, but keeping up to date with the current updates would also be almost impossible. And it's actually for one reason. You see, Tango Tech's bulk storage silo is 3 blocks wide instead of 1 block wide, because stacking each of these silos takes up 3 times the amount of space than it would if it was 1 wide. You know, not saying this design is bad or anything, I still really think it's a good design. And it clearly is the best design because it's the only design that I've been able to find on YouTube that's as compact as it is. And the silo wasn't the only problem. I was using a bunch of other modules and different redstone components that weren't 1 wide either, so that also contributed to it. The only difference is that I was able to find or make 1 wide designs for all of these other ones. But for one reason or another, I just couldn't figure out a 1 wide design for the bulk storage silo. And it mostly had to do with the way redstone lamps work. You see, they allow redstone signal to pass through and power blocks next to them. And the way the chest and hopper system was set up forces this staggering pattern with the comparators that read if the chests and hoppers have items. It causes the redstone lamps to give an inaccurate reading on what was actually being stored. I wasn't a big fan of this, and without any other designs and struggling to make my own design, I ended up feeling really unsatisfied and pretty burnt out of redstone too. And I thought, Maybe my dream of true and total automation wasn't really possible. And after coming to terms with that, I decided to put the mask down. After spending some time in a fresh survival world to take a break from Redstone and to explore my creative side of the game, it didn't really take long before I felt like I needed to make a storage room. I looked at the bare chests sitting at the bottom of my farms, and I looked at the barrels sitting in the walls. And as I was building, I just kept thinking about the bulk storage display. It kept nagging at me. I knew that this wasn't all my storage system could be. I knew that I could do better. This time, things were different. When Mojang added the crafter to the game in the 1.21 update, there was one block they added that I had completely overlooked. The copper bulb. You see, copper bulbs have this unique ability compared to redstone lamps. Both give off light when turned on, but copper bulbs don't allow signal to pass through the neighboring blocks unlike redstone lamps. And copper bulbs also change state when turned on and maintain their state when the power is off. This creates essentially a toggle, or what we logic gate nerds like to call a T flip-flop. And since we only need to read whether the comparator is on or off, by adding observers in between, we can detect when the comparator turns on and send a short signal to the bulb to turn on. If the comparator turns off because the inventory is empty, then the copper bulb is also off. By stacking this alternating comparator-observer copper bulb combination next to chests and hoppers, we can make a one-wide tileable display that can give accurate readings on how full your storage is, and can be infinitely stacked both vertically and horizontally. There is one small issue with this design though. When items start flowing into the storage, there's a pattern of lights turning on every other row. This is because the hoppers in the back hold onto the items just long enough for the comparators to think that the storage is full. To fix this, I added a set of hoppers behind the storage so that the items flow straight down to the bottom and slowly fill up. This gives us our seamlessness of the lights that turn on as the storage fills up. And little did I know that this design would actually be the missing piece that I needed. Once I realized that my goal might actually be possible, I got to work really fast. But I decided that if I was going to do this, I needed to start completely fresh, and I needed some clear goals. I want the entire system to be one wide and tileable, so it's easy to expand. I want to be able to store and auto-craft as many items as possible, so that we can build any size storage that allows for any item. I want to be able to wire it up to farms. I wanted it to be as lag-friendly as possible. I also want to make it as compact as it can possibly be. It needs to be smaller than 48 blocks long so that it can fit inside of the space that chunk loaders can reach. If you're unsure about what a chunk or what chunk loading is and why we need it, I'll explain it in one of the later videos in the detailed overview series. But basically, I need it for our final goal. I want to be able to run these storage systems even when I'm not around, so that I can build and work on projects and always have resources available when I run out. I collected as many one-wide tileable redstone designs as I could, and I began adding them onto the bulk storage display. As I was adding on each of these machines and started layering them next to each other, I quickly realized that each of these components actually act as a module. and that you can actually choose to have each of these modules included in a slice or not. If you're not sure what I mean, let's compare two items real quick. You see, if I wanted to store something like a cobblestone stair in one of these slices, well, cobblestone stairs aren't used in any crafting recipes, so there's no reason to have a dispensing system for it. But I do use them a lot when I build, so storing them in shulker boxes is something that I definitely want to do. But if for whatever reason I wanted to store something like stone pickaxes, well, these two items are completely different. For starters, pickaxes are made with two materials, compared to stairs where they're only made with one. But also, pickaxes are unstackable items, and stairs stack to 64. Not only that, I can't ever imagine needing to have shulker boxes upon shulker boxes of stone pickaxes. So there's really no reason to have the shulker loader on this slice. And not all items are used in crafting recipes. Many are the final result. And a lot of items are farmable, so you don't even need a crafter for those. I call this concept item properties. And these properties dictate what modules we include in our slices. This creates a really unique challenge of how we're going to handle picking these items up, and even putting them into the storage slices. You see, we can pick up items that stack to 64 with normal hopper filters, but what about items that only stack to 1 or 16? There are filter designs out there that handle these stack sizes, but the problem I found with most of them is that they're not 1 wide and tileable, and the ones that were 1 wide didn't stack well with the regular item filters. It would cause them to break and lose the items in the filter. But there is something in the game that can handle both stack sizes of 1 and 16. The Allay. You see, allays have this really cool ability to be able to pick up any item at any stack size. Not only will they pick up items, but they'll also deliver them to you. And if you have a nearby note block that plays, they'll travel to that note block and drop items near it for the next 30 seconds. Allays also have a 3-second pickup cooldown between being able to pick up full stacks, so that's really important to keep in mind for later. Something that we also have to keep in mind is that we'll also need a clock to activate the note blocks nearby the allays every 30 seconds, and keep this clock on so long as there are items running through the system. I decided to use this modified version of Elmango's Allay item sorter for quite a few reasons. For starters, it was perfectly stackable right next to regular item filters, so that meant it could actually work as its own module. And the second reason is that this design is actually really easy to work with. Moving the allays into the right spot is pretty easy, and once they're in, they don't have to move. And with the allay's unique ability to be able to duplicate when given an amethyst shard and playing a jukebox nearby, this means that needing to make an abundance of these filters is also really easy. The third reason I wanted to use this design is not only because it was decently small and compact, but the way the minecarts are angled causes the allay to throw any item back into the item stream if it notices that any of the storage below it is full. This is perfect for sending any excess items to an overflow storage or trashing them in lava. It ensures that too many items don't stack up and cause performance issues. There is one problem that I ended up finding with this system though, and it's that if you use a regular line of redstone wire and repeaters, having the series of note blocks that are meant to get played, they end up getting played in a delay. And an allay that's sitting further down the item stream can actually get attracted to the wrong note block. And because that allay isn't close enough, it ends up refusing to drop any of the items it picked up. I ended up fixing this problem by using a 2-way instant repeater design. I'm using this design by Cakeson, and it's actually really cool how it works. I'm not going to go too much into specific details on this design, so I highly recommend checking out his video on it. But it basically allows us to send a signal from one side of the wire all the way to the other side with 0 delay. But that's not even the coolest part, because not only does it work from one side to the other, but redstone components can be updated instantly along the entire line. And this turned out to be the perfect thing I needed for the allays. So now that we have our stack size problem figured out, we need to figure out how we're going to store these items. And luckily we only have 2 options for that. We can either store items in their raw format, or we can choose to put items into an automatic Shulkerbox loader and store bulk amounts of items. I'm using this design that I got from the guys over on SciCraft. I'm not exactly sure who designed this, but if you guys know who did, make sure to shout them out in the comments so we can give them the proper credit they deserve. Because over the thousands of hours of testing that I've used this design, I've always found it to be reliable. Some of the other designs out there have issues with things like the shulker boxes getting stuck or accidentally falling into the slice next to them. There are a couple downsides of this design though. If the box loader runs out of boxes to restock itself and we add more in, the loader won't be able to recognize that it can restock the box. We would have to manually place a new box in order for it to start working again. To fix this, I added a system to detect when we're getting low on shulker boxes, and this locks the inputs of the slices so that we don't keep filling the boxes. System can't break if it doesn't need to keep restocking itself. This also allows us to hook it up to the slice that stores shulker boxes. That way we can send more when we're low and also keep auto-crafting them. The second downside is that the loader requires the box to be completely full before it puts it in the storage. This means we need 27 stacks of items before we even see the box. And for rare items that you don't get a whole lot of, this means that those items end up in Shulkerbox limbo. Hello? Luckily, we can choose to not store those items in shulker boxes, and store them in their raw form instead. I also added a light at the top of the slices so that you know when the storage slice is full. And if a slice does become full, it will turn itself off so that we don't keep making items that we can't store. We need to also talk about how items are crafted. By looking through all of the different crafting recipes in the game, I was able to sort them all into 4 categories. I call these 4 categories crafting types. Crafting type 1 is reserved for recipes that are made with one resource type, things like cobblestone into cobblestone stairs. And as you can probably imagine, tiers 2 and 3 are both reserved for 2 item type recipes and recipes that are made with 3 or more items respectively. And since we have the option of not having crafters in any of the slices, this is perfect for crafting type 4. I classify items in this category as items that are collected manually, farmable items, or items obtained through other forms of crafting like in anvils or furnaces. Now crafting types also have 2 subtypes. The first subtype is for unstackable items, and it introduces variations of these crafting modules that allow for Allay item filters. And this subtype only applies to crafting types 2 and 3, because there currently aren't any recipes that require 2 unstackable items to make. The only recipes that are combining 2 armor pieces to repair them, but for what I'm trying to do that felt a little unnecessary. And the second subtype is for introducing different redstone clocks into the crafter. And this allows us to gain more precise control over the crafting speed. It ensures that recipes that take more items to make have enough time to fill up the crafter before being made. That way we don't get inaccurate recipes. It also allows us to control the output rate of the crafters and how fast items are being made. And this is perfect since allays can only pick up items every 3 seconds. It's also important since one slice can only handle a maximum of 9,000 items per hour. This is due to our filters only being single hopper speed, and crafting items any faster than this could cause them to overflow and go into the trash system. The second subtype is also a little special, because not only does it apply to the regular crafting types, but it also applies to the unstackable subtype as well. For item types 1, we're again going to be using Brandon Hennis's design. I did find one issue with this design though, and it was that when trying to craft anything that only used one input slot, like turning planks into buttons, I noticed that the crafter would actually lock up and stop crafting entirely, and I figured out it's due to the way the redstone on the crafter works. When the crafter starts accepting items in order to make a recipe, it'll start putting items in any unselected slots one at a time from left to right, and once the items reach the final slot, they restart at the beginning and start filling back up again. By selecting and unselecting different squares inside of the crafter, we're able to make any recipe shape we want. And by using a comparator to send a signal only when the crafter has enough items to make a recipe, we're able to power the crafter and it'll spit out that recipe. Because items fill up one at a time in the crafter, if too many items fill up the slots, the comparator will read that it's always full and constantly keep it powered on. I fixed this issue by adding a clock mechanism to the crafter, and by giving it the same property of only activating when the comparator reads that the crafter is full, we're now able to craft every item that uses one resource type. And by adjusting the clock speeds, and depending on the recipes that are being made, we can actually adjust the output rate of the items that are being made from the crafters. To handle 2 item crafting, I was also going to use RaiseWorks 2 item crafter, but you might notice that this design doesn't really fit with our goal of needing to be 1 wide. This meant that all of these crafters would have to be in their own section away from the storage system, and with over 500 recipes that use this design, it meant that it would take up a very large area. So I decided to make a 1 wide version. It works pretty much the same as RaiseWorks design by only turning on a clock when the system recognizes that it has enough of both items to craft it. This prevents items from running out and breaking the recipe shape. I also made a version that includes an Allay item filter on one of the sides to handle 1 unstackable and 1 stackable recipes. Recipes like making tipped arrows. You'll notice that the clock on this version is also different. This clock is required on this version. It's timed perfectly with the 3-second pickup cooldown of the allays. This ensures that we don't craft them too fast and break the recipe shape, or craft them too slow and cause them to go to the overflow system. You can also use this clock for recipes with 2 sets of stackable items. It gives the crafter enough time to fill up, and it's good for recipes with different item ratios, like 2 planks and 4 sticks to make fences. For type 3 crafting, I'm still using RaiseWorks All Crafter. It still has the same issue of not being 1 wide, but with only about 100 of these recipes that use this design, I figured it was acceptable for now. It does have an issue with the items sometimes getting out of order, but by adding spaces between some of the different item storages, it gives the crafter enough time to fill up in the right order. The inputs to the crafters are also locked by default, and they only unlock when activated by the control panel. This ensures that our provider items only feed into the crafter that we want making items, instead of feeding into inactive crafters. And this gives us much more specific control over what we're crafting. The control panel will also send a signal down to a layer that sits beneath all of the modules. And you might recognize this layer since he decided to grace us with his presence yet again. The U.N.C. If you don't remember what the U.N.C is, it stands for Universal Network Communicator, and it's how all of the slices communicate with each other. It works by having several different redstone lines layered on top of each other. All of these lines travel across the entire storage system, and by adding copper bulbs that act as on-off toggles and selecting which lines are active, we're able to control which slices activate which lines. Each of these lines then travel to a single slice in the storage system that activate the dispensing system on that slice. The dispensing system then sends all of those items to the crafters to keep them constantly full. With this, we're able to have any slice activate any other slice that contains items needed to make the item we need. The crafters will constantly stay full with resources to keep crafting, and any leftover items don't get used. They merge back up with the input at the top and return back to its original slice. This way we can constantly recycle items and never waste anything. The dispensing systems are also in a similar boat to the crafters. There are 2 different unloader types and both have 3 subtypes. The first type of unloader is for raw items and the second type is for shulker boxes. I'm using a modified version of vidMC's Shulkerbox Unloader. It works by unloading full shulker boxes from our bulk storage system, and then breaking it and replacing it with a full new box when it's empty. Those empty boxes then get sent to a buffer that sends them back up to the box loaders, and by including a system that gives priority to this buffer, this ensures that we recycle these boxes before we send a signal to the slice that makes new ones. And both of these unloader types have 3 subtypes. The first subtype is for single hopper speed unloader, and the second subtype is for a 2x hopper speed unloader using a minecart that splits over 2 hoppers. For the Shulkerbox unloader, this would be true 2x hopper speed, but for raw items this isn't the case. This is because there's only 1 line of hoppers that lead out of our bulk storage. But by placing a chest above the minecart, we're able to add a buffer that gives us 2x hopper speed for at least a little while. I included a 2x hopper speed unloader because there are a lot of items in the game that are used by a lot of different recipes. And since the fastest we can unload items is 18,000 items per hour, this means that we're able to craft 2 different items that use the same resource. We can craft more than 2 different items at a time, but anything more than 2 at a time would be much slower, due to the output rate of the dispensing system. And the 1x hopper speed unloader is for items that aren't used in a whole lot of recipes. That way we don't add unnecessary minecart entities where we don't need them. The third subtype is an alternate clock that uses a 1-wide tileable etho hopper clock. This allows us to control how often our items are dispensed. which is again also really good for the 3-second item pickup delay on the allays. After the clocks are activated, a second signal will also be sent through the control panel and up to a display light that lets you know that slice is currently dispensing its items. Normally this would mean that powering the control panel would cause the system to turn off and on when you activate the dispensing system. To fix this, I added a system that stops the signal from traveling down to the control panel. That way we're not accidentally toggling anything we don't want. All of the items travel to the very beginning of all of the crafters, starting at type 1 crafters. Once the items make it through the first set of crafters, they'll move on to the second set of type 2 crafters. They'll travel down the first set of item filters and then make a U-turn like you forgot something at the store. Then they travel down the second set of filters, and then the items will make their way to our type 3 crafters. Once they make it through all of these sets of crafters, they finally group up with the output of the crafters. I added a stone cutter right before the items enter the crafting loop, which allows them to group up and decreases the total entity count, which assists in lag prevention. The control panel from the slices will also activate a set of 30-second etho hopper clocks. These clocks only activate when a slice that has allays in it is turned on. And I separated the clocks out for the crafters and input so we only activate what's needed, reducing the amount of circuits firing at once and helping with performance a little bit. The control panel will also activate an automatic chunkloading system with this nether portal design that I found by Dark. This system will also stay on so long as we detect that items are flowing through the storage. The chunkloaders will also activate a set of lights at the top of the interface, and they only turn on if all of the loaders are active. This way we can monitor if any of our chunk loaders are broken in whichever segment they're in. You may also notice that I'm using Waterways with blue ice to transport items through the system. I decided to use this method because it reduced the amount of hoppers needed and I was able to get items that travel at really fast speeds. I tested both packed and blue ice in a speed test, and in terms of transporting items, blue ice came up faster at 15 blocks per second. Since these items are traveling out in the open, it's important to make sure they travel as fast as possible, so that we don't have to worry about the items despawning before they make it to their destination. The advantage of using all of the iceways as main anchor points for the slices is that the items will have a straight shot without any interruptions, allowing them to travel as fast as they can. In much larger storage systems, this can still be an issue because if an item is left out in the open too long, it will despawn after 5 minutes. But when I was swimming out in the ocean the other day, I met a dolphin named Rufus. He told me that he spent his whole life lifting items off the floor. But recently, there's been a shortage of items to move, and his family needed work. Luckily, I had the perfect job for him. We shook fins and made a deal so that as long as he picks up all of the items in my storage system, him and his family can have a lifetime supply of fish and items to pick up. The Rufus item refresh system was actually developed by both Fallen Breath and Cubic Meter, and probably one of the most powerful storage tech designs for this project. It works because dolphins are able to pick up and drop items at really fast speeds. However, in version 26.2, there's currently a bug where dolphins pick up items really inconsistently. Luckily, this bug was fixed in the 26.3 snapshots, and it should be working again when the full version releases. While I was working on all of these different modules, I had an idea that I had remembered from a video that EthosLab made a long time ago. In one of his Let's Play episodes, he made a storage system that allowed you to request items from it and have them sent to you. I thought this idea was super cool, so I wanted to give it a shot. It works by taking a code of different numbers and assigning them to items. He then used a binary encoder to request items with that specific code. This does have a few limitations because of the way the binary system works. He can only have up to 256 unique items. This doesn't really work well for our goal of being able to be expandable, so I decided to design the entire system by scratch. I started by using a selection panel designed by BlueCooled97. It works by using a lectern and turning pages to change the selection. I then hooked this up to a series of hopper clocks, and when sending a request, the hopper clocks will power a second set of droppers for any specified amount of time. Adjusting the clocks allows you to precisely select any number of raw items or shulker boxes of items. And by adjusting these hopper clocks, we're able to also adjust how long these droppers stay powered for, and the length in which these droppers stay powered determines how many items we choose to send. To request an item from your storage system, All you have to do is look inside of the set of chests nearby the lectern. These chests contain all of the items that you might have in your storage system. And by hovering over one of these items and dropping it on the floor, the hoppers in front of the chest will pick up the item and start the process of searching for it. The system will then enter search mode and a light will start flashing above the chests. Optionally, you can also put in a music disc as elevator music while you wait. And when an item is found in the system, the music will stop. The system takes the item that you dropped and sends it through a separate set of item filters specifically for the call system. If the item you're looking for has a slice that matches, the filter will pick it up and hold onto it temporarily. The search time depends on how you set up the storage. The larger the storage, the longer the search time. There are a few things we can do to help this, and it has to do with how we set up the item streams. It takes roughly 20 seconds for an item to be found in a row of slices that's 250 blocks long. If you have a second row of slices on the other side, and loop the ice stream, the search time doubles. We can help this by splitting the set of chests and the search into their own row, which helps cut down search time and item retrieval, and also gives us a couple benefits. The whole time the system is in search mode, it will keep its own set of clocks on for the allays if it needs it, and also keep the chunk loading system on for that row as well. The chunk loading is set up for 1 row of slices, so 2 rows of loaders for 2 rows of slices. And only the row of slices in search mode will have its chunk loading system on. That way we don't load the entire system if it's not needed. You can choose to hook up your whole storage to one call system, but just know that the search time scales with the size of your storage. And when an item is found, it sends a signal back to the call system to switch to item found mode. If an item is found in the system, any music that's currently playing will stop. A positive little jingle will play, and the flashing light above the chest will then turn solid. When you see and hear all of this happen, that means an item has successfully been found in your storage system, and now you're ready to submit your request. If an item you send isn't recognized by the system, it'll return it to you, play a negative sound, and then reset the call system so that you can submit another request. Once an item is found in the system, it unlocks the send and cancel buttons. These buttons are locked by default to prevent any accidental misfiring of any of the circuits. Sending the request plays a positive jingle to let you know that your request was accepted. And the cancel button is pretty self-explanatory. After the request is finished, the item you dropped to send the request is returned to the original chest it was in, the call system then resets itself, and the system is ready for the next request. If you send a request for an item in your storage that doesn't use shulker boxes, but the request was for shulker boxes, the slice will send you an error signal to let you know that it couldn't process your request. Setting it up this way means we can request multiple kinds of items at once, and bulk call any number of items. And of course, the call system is designed to be modular as well. You can choose what items you want to use in the call system and what items you don't. And if you don't want to use the call system at all, then you don't have to. I also added a Shulkerbox Display module under the main chest in case of the event that you just want to be able to grab a few items instead of full boxes from your chests. The display is designed by Samos the Sage. It works by detecting if the box is empty and restocking itself with a full box. The empty shulker box then gets sent up to the box loaders so that we can recycle used shulker boxes before we make more. There is only one issue I have with this design though, and it's when that using it for the first time, the display doesn't automatically know that it can restock itself. Luckily, this only happens the first time that you use it, and we can easily fix it by pre-filling the dispenser with just 3 or 4 shulker boxes that have a couple items in them. And when the slices start to fill up with shulker boxes, we can pretty easily cycle the rest of the shulker boxes until the right one pops up. After that, it should be pretty good here on out. I classify these modules as extensions because I can see some people thinking that this is a bit overkill. In keeping with the theme of modularity, both of these systems are completely optional per slice. Now there is one more module, but I don't really want to talk about it too much because it's the input system. I mostly don't want to talk about it too much because it really depends on the system you make. But it is important to remember the 3-second allay pickup rule. And we want to make sure that if any items are running through the system stays loaded so that we can fully process all of the items before automatically shutting it down. And we also want to make sure that we turn on the clocks for the allay filters if we're inputting items. but I will cover this system in one of the videos of the detailed overview series, so I recommend checking that out when it releases. By taking all of these different modules, we can make hundreds of combinations of slices. We get over 250 unique slices, and the limit doesn't stop there. By changing and modifying each of these modules, this means that we're essentially able to have infinite possibilities of slice combinations. Now, you might be thinking, yo Mini, isn't it kind of complicated? I mean, how am I supposed to know which items go with which modules? And you would be absolutely right. Taking every item in the game and organizing all of their properties to fit their perfect slice would genuinely take years to do by hand. And while I was building this, it got really confusing trying to figure out which slice is which, so I decided I needed to make a naming convention. By taking every item and organizing them by their properties, I was able to sort them all into 4 categories. I call these categories item types. Item type 1 is for items that are farmed or manually harvested, so there's no crafting in these item types. It does have a farm toggle so we can hook up these slices to the farms, and the slice also only handles items that stack to 64. Type 2 items are items that are made from crafting recipe, but only the ones that are made with one resource type. It also only handles items that stack to 64. Type 3 items are reserved for recipes that use 2 item types, and also recipes with 1 stackable and 1 unstackable. Now, Type 4 is where we get kind of wacky, because it combines all of the properties from the first 3 item types. The only difference is that this item type handles unstackable and stack sizes of 16. In each of these 4 categories, we can have a bunch of unique slices depending on all of the different modules included, including the Dispensing System and the Shulkerbox Loaders. For the naming convention, I ended up going with a number-lettered number system. The first number can be 1 through 4, and this represents the item types I just mentioned. The letter represents how we handle storing items and also the extensions we add onto the slices. The letters range from A through H, and I call these letters slice set because there are a bunch of slice variants within them. Slice sets A, C, E, and G handle raw items, while sets B, D, F, and H handle shulker boxes of items. Sets A and B have no call system and no Shulkerbox display. C and D have a call system. E and F have just a Shulkerbox display, and sets G and H have both a Shulkerbox display and a call system attached. But wait a second, Mini. If sets E and G are for raw items, how does it have a box display? Well, it doesn't. The display is gone, but the shape of the slice is the same, so it can stack with slices that do have them. Remember the Iceway anchor points from earlier? Well, these ensure that all of these slice sets are compatible with each other stacking-wise. For sets that are compatible, I highlighted in green. For sets A through G, they are only compatible with sets B through H, if you modify the filters at the top and leave the space for the box loader empty. These are highlighted in blue with an M, and it means compatible if modified. For sets A, B, C, and D, they're not compatible with sets E, F, G, and H, because the inclusion of the Shulkerbox display changes the shape of the slices and causes the modules and Iceway anchor points to become unaligned, and these are highlighted in red. The final number represents the slice variant, and those can be infinite because all of the different module variants that are within them. So, for example, slice 1A-1 represents the slice that stores raw items, has no crafter, can be connected to farms, has no dispensing system, no call system, and no Shulkerbox display. The perfect slice for something like an item that was collected manually. I know the naming convention can be a little bit weird and complicated, so let me know if I did a good job at explaining it. I also used some small optional quality of life features in these slices. I color-coded every module to make it easier to find what we're working with. I also added stained glass on top of a lot of the modules to not only help with color coding, but to also help prevent mob spawning and any accidental water damage from the ice streams. I also added light sources around to make it easier to see when you're deep in the guts of the machine trying to do maintenance. Alright, I know that was a ton of information to get through, but we made it. And I just want to take a quick second to say thank you for making it all this way. Hopefully I did a good enough job at explaining how I ended up making version 1 of the Limitless storage system. And of course, if you still have any questions about anything related to the modules, all of the different slice combinations, the extensions, or how any of it connects together, feel free to ask away, and I'll try my best to address it as soon as I can. And if you're wondering if any of these quality of life features help with organizing all of the items into different slices, it does actually help a little bit, but it would still take a stupid amount of time to be able to sort all of those items. And so I decided to do a little bit of tag teaming to make a system that would help us organize all of these items. I pulled my friend Wolo in to help me make a Google spreadsheet to help with calculating every item into one of the 4 categories. And then based on the answers you put for each of the items, the output gives you the slice number that has the modules you need. This thing took me like a week of caffeinated overnights to make, and a lot of calculator testing and help from Wolo to make it work right. But we managed to get it. I decided to take it a little bit further though and list down all of the items that are used in recipes, which will be important for wiring up the U.N.C system later. You see, the U.N.C scales in size based on how many items in your storage are used in recipes or not. I reserved the top half of the U.N.C for the most commonly used recipes. That way I was able to make sure that the most commonly used recipes had enough vertical space in the U.N.C, and so that it's easier to wire up any of the slices that need these items. For items that are a lot less commonly used, I reserved for the bottom half of the U.N.C. Since these bottom lines aren't really used all that often, there's sometimes enough space to be able to put more than one item on the same line. This way we save vertical height and allowing for more options for all of these slices to connect to. I'm also a really big stats person, so I decided to have the spreadsheet count how many times a slice number appears in the list and all of the entities and whatnot. This is by no means a final version, but for the most part it's functional and gives me a really accurate view on how many items I'm storing in my storage system, what modules are being used, which slices are being used, and how many total entities there are in the system. This allows me to get a much better gauge at how these storage systems perform at much larger scales. I also wanted this spreadsheet to be user-friendly so that you didn't have to put any of the calculations in. All you had to do was go down the list of items that were already there, select the correct properties and the modules that you want for them, and the spreadsheet will assign that item to the slice number that you need for you automatically. And like I said, this spreadsheet is nowhere near done. I have a lot of different ideas for what I want to include in this in future versions. For example, I would like to be able to count exactly how many resources each of these slices need. And then as you go down your list and select the items that you want, the spreadsheet will automatically count the total amount of items that you need to be able to make it. It also gives me a really good view of how many chests and hoppers I'm using in my system. That way I can make adjustments if I'm concerned about performance issues before I even start making it. I also want it to be able to automatically calculate which item should be on which line of the U.N.C. But those are features that'll come in future versions of the spreadsheet. And as I mentioned in the intro of the video, a copy of this spreadsheet will be publicly available and updated as time goes on so that you can use it to make your own limitless storage system. I finally had version 1 fully completed, but I wasn't quite ready to make a video on it yet. You see, after taking all of these different slices and items, I tried to make a bigger storage system to do testing and do bug fixing. And boy, did I ever find bugs. I found a ton of bugs in this thing. So many, in fact, that I ended up going back to the drawing board completely and redesigning an entirely new version. But let me tell you, it was completely worth it. And after nearly 6 months since starting the Limitless project, I finally landed on a version that I was satisfied with. It fixed almost all of the issues I had with version 1. The redstone was much more compact, made the designs better, and I cracked down on a bunch of things causing performance dips. And just as I was ready to start putting it all together and start laying the groundwork to make a video, time to lock in. I got to work. I organized every item in the game onto my spreadsheet and went through every item to sort them into a slice. With every item finally assigned to a slice, I organized all of the slices into categories, then organized all of these categories into 4 halls. These 4 halls then connected up together to make the final main limitless storage system. I spent the next 4 weeks copying, pasting, wiring, testing, and tweaking designs, and I finally felt like I was getting closer and closer to my goal. I could finally see the shape that I had imagined so many years ago taking form right before my very eyes. As I was building, my world crashed. And I didn't think of anything at first. I thought, no, I just copied and pasted too hard or something. But when I tried to relaunch the world, I couldn't open it. The game would just crash, and it would give me an error that I had never seen before. After doing some research and some tweaking and a few hours of distressed worry that all the years of work had just vanished like that, my computer's hard drive didn't have enough allocated RAM to be able to process this monster. And after doing some modifications of page files and allocating more RAM, I was finally able to log back into the world. And after putting everything together, I finally had every item in the game in the palm of my hand.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
With the possibility of crafting every craftable item and block, the ability to connect everything to farms, the ability to automate as many items as possible. So, after all of this, does this thing really solve Minecraft's inventory problem? As crazy as this storage system is, it doesn't fully solve the inventory problem. Although this does solve a lot of problems, this thing is far from perfect. It still has a lot of issues that I'm aware of. Unfortunately, some of these issues can only be fixed with performance mods or Mojang making performance improvements to the game. But some of the issues I can fix, and I plan to, in future versions of this design. It might even be better to make a smaller, more lag-friendly multi-item sorter as a main storage, and then using these for farms or factories around your world. And this thing most likely doesn't work on bedrock either. I don't really want to spend another 2 years trying to relearn the redstone to do it on bedrock, but I welcome anyone who wants to take the challenge. And trust me, I know how ambitious this is. In fact, I only built this full version to prove that it truly is possible to do this. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend building something to this scale in survival. There are a lot of items included in this thing that you just wouldn't store in survival, unless you're an avid collector of level 1 enchanted books and want to autocraft wooden tools. But you can definitely make one that is practical for survival. And this system is still not complete. After the crash, I stopped expanding and started focusing on the video, because the deadline for the SOAR contest was just weeks away. It still doesn't have any of the minecarts or the allays, and the filters still need to be set up. And the U.N.C is also not fully connected. Again, this was mostly just meant to show the true scale of this project. But if people really want me to complete it, I might, and then release the full version for anyone who might want it. Unfortunately, the best solution to being able to carry more items is, believe it or not, more inventory slots. And with Mojang not really giving clear answers on expanding the current inventory or adding backpacks, this behemoth of a machine is probably the closest we've ever been to never having to worry about sorting or collecting new items, ever again. So now you know how we got here. But there's still one question left to be unanswered. Where do we go from here? I want to take a second to look into the future. Even though this current version doesn't fully solve the issues of our pockets, it certainly helps us with being able to organize all of our items. And it frees us from the shackles of unorganized chests, and gives us more freedom to do the things we want to do. It unlocks possibilities we've never had before. And, at the end, it was a really fun project to work on. In the future, I imagine a bunch of these custom storage systems spread out around the entire world, surrounded by beautiful builds, with each system being able to send items back and forth, setting up main hubs to request items and never having to craft another item by hand ever again. And I imagine all kinds of players using this design to make whatever storage system they want to make, and improving on the design in their own ways to make it their own storage system. I know that for me, this journey is just the beginning. I still plan to work on future versions of the design and keep improving on the technology. And with all of your help, I know we can make this the best design it can be. I've had other ideas like the ability to request crafting operations, or automatically turning on farms when our storage gets low. And at the end, when I look out at my world and I see peace, and I will finally rest. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I learned a lot on this journey so far, and to be honest, when I first started this project, I wouldn't have even considered myself good at Redstone in the slightest. Over time, through every challenge, I ended up learning something new and made new ideas come to fruition in ways I couldn't have imagined better. It's really hard to put into words what this project has meant to me, and I am so excited to see where this will go. I can't even imagine what you will make, and that's honestly why I gave it this name. Not because of what it can do, but because of what you can do with it. None of this would have been possible if it weren't for all the amazing Redstoners who inspired me to pursue this, or the incredibly talented Redstoners who have designed Redstone modules for the last 20 years. I also want to thank Matt and Crafty for hosting this contest. It really lit a fire under my ass to get this done, and otherwise, it probably would have taken me another year for the video to come out. But the contest just happened to be so perfectly timed with the progress on my project, and turned out to be the perfect push that I needed. Unfortunately, when editing this though, I ran into a few audio bugs, and I wasn't able to submit the full thing to SOAR. I was able to submit the trailer though, and I am at least happy about that. It does end up kind of working out though, since this video turned out to be more than an hour long, and the trailer for the video blew up way more than I ever would have imagined. It got over 30,000 views, and I went from 20 subs to over 1,000 in less than 7 days. And I honestly couldn't be happier with how it turned out. And most importantly, thank you for watching this video and giving it so much love and support. It truly means so much to me to be able to share what I've made, and I'm excited to show you what I make next. See you next time.